They say money solves everything. Tell that to a man with a screaming 9-year-old at 30,000 feet in a cabin full of phones pointed like little judgment guns. Richard Hale, $47 million in his accounts. A tech empire with his name on the glass, couldn't quiet his own son. 3 rows back, in a seat that still smelled like disinfectant and somebody else's coffee, a 12-year-old kid named Malik. Johnson watched, understood what everyone else missed, and stood up anyway. Yeah, that happened. Let me back up a sec. Morning sun bouncing off gate B7 at LaGuardia, Richard adjusting his Italian tie. Like that knot could hold his life together. The first-class agent smiled with muscle memory. Welcome back, Mr. Hale, while Ethan pressed his palms to his ears, rocking gently. The world too loud. Too bright, too everything. People whispered about the suit, about the dead wife, about this special needs kid, because people love a story as long as it isn't theirs. Richard heard every word and kept moving, the way you do when holding a fragile thing and pretending it's not fragile. They took 2A and 2B. Ethan traced shapes on the window, 7 quick strokes, 3 slow, his private metronome. Richard tried the headphones. Ethan flinched, the headphones clattered, and the safety demo hit like a fire alarm. Across the curtain, Malik, first time flying, backpack stitched together with safety pins, a broken toy car tucked inside. Felt that old knot in his stomach loosen into something like purpose. He'd seen the flapping hands, the rocking, the eyes avoiding light. He'd helped his cousin Marcus through storms like this. You know what I mean? When you recognize the pattern and your body moves before you've allowed yourself to think. Engines spooled up, and the plane hurtled down the runway. Ethan's whimper turned into a keening scream, then a full-body panic. Legs kicking, palms smacking his cheeks, small fists drumming his thighs in a terrible rhythm. A man in front turned and hissed, "I paid $4,000 for this seat." The kind of sentence that sounds like a lawsuit and a confession at the same time. Flight attendants hovered with thin smiles and quiet panic. Someone suggested restraints. Richard said, "Absolutely not," in a voice that belonged to boardrooms and depositions. And the cabin, hungry for a villain, desperate for a hero, started choosing sides. Malik slipped past the curtain like a kid whose decided consequences are less important than doing the right thing. He crouched low beside Ethan, smaller than the problem but calmer than the room. Never touching, never crowding, voice even and quiet. "It's loud, I know. I'm here." He set the red toy car on the tray and nudged it. Crooked wheel, slow arc, back and forth, offering a rhythm the boy could hold without asking for anything in return. Ethan's breathing caught, then matched the car. Palms lowered, shoulders dropped. A sound escaped that wasn't a sob, not yet a laugh. Something new, hope clearing its throat. "Want to try?" Malik said, pulling his hand back the instant Ethan reached. Agency, tiny, ordinary, earth-shaking. Richard felt that burn behind his eyes. He avoids with meetings and flights. He watched his son choose a stranger over him and understood, horribly, why. From there the room changed shape. Complaints shrank. Curiosity got brave. The businessman with the watch looked smaller somehow. Malik mirrored Ethan's hums, turned tapping patterns into music, 7 fast, 3 slow, then invited Richard in like a bandleader with an extra drum. Richard fumbled, Ethan guided. Their hands found the same beat for once. A flight attendant brought apple juice only after Malik made it a question. "What color is apple juice?" And Ethan said, "Yellow like the sun," which made yes feel like Ethan's idea. Control without a fight, fatherhood's white whale. Turbulence rippled the cabin and would have blown the whole thing to pieces if Malik hadn't renamed it. Superhero plane flexing its wing muscles. Ethan snorted, corrected the physics, still bought the story. When he whispered, "Daddy's grumpy a lot." The cabin, this jury of strangers, almost laughed until he added, clear as bells. "He's sad since Mommy went to heaven." And nobody laughed at all. Malik said, "My mom's sick." Plain like a weather report. Richard heard 2 boys build a bridge out of truth where adults usually stack cardboard excuses. A twist came from the most unlikely place, the man with the expensive watch. He turned again, but not to complain. "My brother's autistic," he said. "We sent him away in the 60s. I haven't seen him in 30 years." The words landed with a thud that shook dust off everyone's certainty. You should find him, Malik said, steady as a compass. The man nodded like a verdict had just been read. They descended into Chicago, everyone pretending to be busy. Ethan clutched Malik's hand and Richard's too. This odd triangle that felt sturdier than anything Richard's money had bought. Well, right, Malik promised. Friends don't stop being friends because they're far apart. Addresses were exchanged, not through a publicist or assistant, but in a battered notebook with neat handwriting. Richard tried to hand him a gold-edged business card and almost laughed at himself. What would a 12-year-old do with gold edges? Another ripple, call it twist too, came rolling up the aisle in a navy suit. Did you say asbestos? He asked after overhearing Malik talk about his mother's lung cancer in the office she cleaned for 20 years. I'm an environmental lawyer. Brennan Fitzgerald and Associates, the kind of firm Richard had once paid to make problems disappear. Pro bono, the lawyer said before pride could swallow need. Patricia, the senior flight attendant, squeezed Malik's shoulder. For once, help felt less like charity and more like community. They deplaned to Aunt Sheila's glitter-lettered sign and a hug that swallowed Malik whole. Thank you for looking after my nephew, she told Richard. Actually, Richard said, and meant it. He looked after us. Ethan announced, it's not charity, it's what friends do, declaring the house rule of a new world. The first-class lounge TV later ran the shaky phone video, 1 million views and counting, Malik kneeling, a toy car rolling, a cabin learning how to be human in public. Richard's stomach flipped, exposure, headlines, all the things he'd spent a career controlling, but then he saw his own face on that screen, a man watching his son be seen, and he let the control go. Weather rolled in, flights grounded, the lounge crackling with complaint. Ethan's panic stirred, planes are supposed to go, rules are supposed to rule, and he asked for Malik the way a drowning person calls for a rope. Richard didn't explain. He matched the sway, called it a new rule, dialed the number with hands that shook, and put Malik on speaker. Sometimes waiting is a different kind of going, Malik said, which should be stitched on every departure board in America. Then, a boy across the room. Same panic, same rocking, and Ethan took the car, sat nearby, rolled it into a crooked arc. Sometimes planes don't fly, he told the boy, but that's okay. Waiting is just a different kind of going. Richard swallowed hard. His son had learned the language and was already fluent enough to teach. By the time the storm passed, the lounge felt like a neighborhood. Strangers sharing snacks. Parents swapping hacks, one mother whispering, "Your son is remarkable," and Richard saying he is, like he'd finally set down a weight. The next morning's flight to LA was quiet except for their tapping, 7 fast, 3 slow, and for once Richard didn't shush the music. He joined it. Cameras waited at LAX, because of course they did. Richard almost pulled Ethan through a side door, then felt that small hand tighten. They want to know about Malik, Ethan said. So Richard told the truth without a PR team. For years I tried to fix my son, he said into a field of microphones. And a 12-year-old taught me to meet him where he is. Reporters asked if they'd stay in touch. Ethan said, friends are forever, and the cameras purred. Instead of heading home, Richard detoured to the office, a glass hive high above the city where he'd made 1,000 decisions that mattered to shareholders and almost none that mattered to Ethan. He sat his boy at the head of the table, pulled a chair next to him, and typed an email that felt like tearing a cast off a healed bone. I'll remain CEO, but I'm delegating operations. Presence is my job. Non-negotiable. He powered off his phone in daylight, on purpose. Small revolution. FaceTime chimed. Malik in Chicago with Aunt Sheila and cousin Marcus peeking over his shoulder. An oncologist from Houston had reached out after the video, pro bono team, fast track. The environmental lawyer had filed suit. The restaurant guy from row 6 had offered Aunt Sheila a job with benefits. When help is a signal, it bounces around the world at the speed of hearts saying yes. Back home, Ethan gave a tour of the train room, naming engines like old friends and saving space on the tracks for future visitors. Richard wandered to his wall of magazine covers and took down the fortune spread, replaced it with a printout from a passenger's phone. Ethan's hand in Malik's, Richard's hand in Ethan's, a circuit. Finally closed. Better, Ethan said, and Richard didn't argue. Night landed soft. Do you think Mommy would be proud? Ethan asked in the dark. Richard felt that ache you live with, not around. Of you, absolutely. Of me. I'm learning. Malik taught us, Ethan said. Broken wheels still roll, just different. Richard kissed his boy's forehead. How had he gone months without that? And went to the office down the hall to draft the charter for a foundation named after a 12-year-old with a busted toy car and the clearest sight in the room. Here's your ending, cinematic and a little messy. The way life really is. A week later in Houston, two boys face the big windows of an airport again. Malik's mom, Diana, smiles thin but fierce as doctors speak in careful optimism. Ethan stands with the toy car, flicks it, watches the crooked arc, laughs. Behind them, the businessman with the watch, now with plane tickets to Maine, texts his brother, I'm coming. Richard steps into the hallway, looks out over a city that never noticed him until he stopped pretending he didn't need it, and powers off his phone again. Inside the room, Ethan asks the question only kids ask with holy audacity, can we all be family now? And nobody says no. And then, just before you tidy it up, a final tilt. The video keeps spreading. Offers pour in. Some want to turn pain into content, kindness into brand strategy. Richard looks at his inbox, then at his son tracing invisible tracks in the air, and decides the story belongs to the people who lived it. He writes one sentence to every network. We'll talk only if it helps families like ours, not if it helps ratings. The replies thin. The right ones remain. What do you think? Did the cabin do right by that boy when it counted? Or did they wait until it was safe to be kind? If you were in 2A, would you have defended him or filmed him? If you've got a story about meeting someone where they are, tell it. If you've got a different take, say it. That's how communities change, one honest argument at a time. If this hit you, if it made you mad or hopeful or both, drop a comment on what doing the right thing looks like. In public, share where you're watching from, and subscribe for more stories that wrestle with what justice and belonging actually feel like when the seatbelt sign is on and everyone's watching. You know what I mean?